Hey guys, in this video we're going to have a look at the data comparison between two drivers at Lonato in the wet in 60 Mini. We're going to see the different driving styles they use, and obviously the one that is the most effective one and the one that is a little bit slower, and we'll see obviously common mistakes so that you can try to ideally avoid them and be best version of yourself also in the wet. Hopefully you can learn something from this, so let's get started. So as you can see, it's a little bit messy, the data chart. Why? Because the two drivers actually make a lot of difference in terms of distance. You can see the yellow one at the end of the lap has done 1,210 meters, whereas the red one has done 1,247 meters. If we look at the calculator, if we make out the math, 1,247 minus 1,210, it's about, you guessed it, 37 meters of difference. Now, is this a good thing or a bad thing? Depends. If you make less distance but you still keep a pretty good speed throughout the corner, then probably going with less distance is better. But if you make so much less speed to compensate for the lower distance, that is not good. In this case, the red does a better job. So the red, you will see, is going to be a lot faster through the corners, a lot later on the brakes, and those 37 meters that he does more are actually paying off. So let's go corner by corner. Unfortunately, as I said, we will have to overlay and adjust corner by corner, because unfortunately there was so much difference in terms of distance that it's not aligned throughout the whole lap, so we have to align it ourselves. So we can see there's a difference in sprocket. The yellow one comes out of the corner a little bit slower. He also gets a worse exit out of the last corner, okay, but then the top speed is quite a bit bigger. So obviously what I normally recommend for drivers in the wet is that even though you will get more wheel spin, driving with a bigger sprocket typically helps training your feeling, and actually is most of the time quicker in terms of lap time when it's pouring rain, or also when it's quite wet. Obviously when it starts to dry up, it's another matter. Going with the lower sprocket starts to help. But you see, in this case, the red actually starts loose here. You're still flat out. Okay, he loses about a tenth, but at least, he's able to carry so much more speed into the corner. You can see he's opening up the line. Listen, the GPS was not perfect, so I will not 100% rely on that, but this is just to show you on the map where we are in terms of corner and a little bit the trend, the tendency of a specific corner with the line. But as I said, I don't want to rely too much on it because the satellites did not catch properly, so yeah, I would not rely too much on it. You can see the delta time, all right, on pure straight was 2/10 loss because of this sprocket, because it was hitting the limiter a lot lower. This is the combined acceleration at the bottom. I will explain to you what it means. But unfortunately, we didn't have the RPM or exhaust temperature because basically the battery was off of the width, so obviously we cannot get those kind of data. But it's no problem. We can still get a lot of meaningful insights just by looking at this. So you can see this combined acceleration is basically the combined of the lateral G and the longitudinal G. Lateral means when you're going into the corner, like what kind of lateral force you're putting on the car, and longitudinal, like forward, like when you're slowing down or accelerating longitudinally, how much force you're putting that weight as well. So when you combine them, you can see a combined G force, and typically that's a good estimate of how much one driver is on the limit, how much the go-kart also allows you to be at the limit. Typically, the bigger the combined acceleration you can carry into the corner, especially on the entry and on the mid corner, the better. So in this case, the two kids have a very similar setup, almost identical, yet one kid is able to carry 1.3 G on the entry of this corner, turn one, and the other 0.7. So the yellow one is clearly under the limit, clearly. Same in the mid corner. He gets to a peak of almost 1.5, whereas the other kid is 0.8. So the yellow kid is completely driving under the limit. So he's not obviously carrying enough speed here for what the car actually can do. The car can do a lot more than what he's actually doing. So he's not trusting a go-kart. And then time loss there, obviously because obviously we have to consider the distance. So right now the delta time will not be so good to measure, but in this case it's about 2.5 tenths, and it makes sense. 2.5 tenths in turn one, actually turn two, let's call it. So yeah, And then we go into the next corner, the turn 3, the bar corner, that's what we call it. There's a massive difference on the brakes. You can see this kid, the yellow kid, arrives 4 kilometers less. Despite that, he brakes earlier and by a nice chunk. Look, 227 compared to 236 is about 8 to 9 meters later, which is quite a bit. And obviously the line is not decent, but as I said, I would not rely too much on the line. I would say the line are quite similar in when I watched them from live. But look at the delta, again, massive difference. Probably the yellow still made a little bit less distance, but look how much time lost there was. 7:26 against 7:73. It's like about half a second of time lost. You know, we had to put this on this kid a little bit like longer sprocket because he was complaining about wheel speed and everything. But obviously the wheel speed is gonna be there, guys. You need to be able to control the wheel speed by being nice and gentle on the throttle pickup and trying to avoid the rubber on the exit. The score was gonna be there. So because of that, he was being also getting a worse exit because obviously he didn't have the torque in the bottom because he was trying to get the more top speed with his sprocket. But obviously that was not ideal. But most of the time he lost is anyways on the brakes. It's a massive look at this point. You know, after they hit the brakes, one is at 72 kilometers an hour, the other is almost 82. It's a 10 kilometers difference. It's huge. And we also have for about 4 kilometers difference on the apex, which means again, look at the G-force difference, like the delta, like the combined. There's some massive amount of difference. Look, it goes into the corner. You can see here that the yellow is turning in early, which is bad. You don't want to do that in the wet. In the wet, you want to go in straight and then at the very end, pump, turn in. Because if you turn in too early, it's kind of washing you out wide, and then you don't get a good exit as well. So the yellow turned in a bit early, I can see from that, and then he has so much less G-force at the apex. Okay, it's not as much as was turn 2. Turn 2 was brutal, but still 1.12 against 0.9 is just not using the grip of the car. Even worse, we go into the mechanics corner, the so-called turn number 4. Again, it's so early on the brakes. Up until this point, we don't have to align yet. I think it's probably like that, to be correct. But look how much difference there is. Obviously, I would speculate about 381. I would speculate about 13 to 14 meters. It says 15 meters here, but you know, I believe there's always like 1 meter of variance. So there's a massive difference on the brakes. Look at here. When the kid is still flat out and the yellow kid has braked, look, there's 74 against 75 against 85. So there's 10 kilometers difference in this point. It's too much. It's huge. It's like, honestly, it's massive. So this kid here, look in terms of delta time, how much he was losing. It was a ton of time. It was 6 tenths in this corner. 70.67, I get minus 8.985 and 6.77. That was the time that it was taken there. So just to give you an idea, in the end there was about 2 seconds time loss, time difference between the two kids. Very similar setup. It's just about the fact that one kid was more experienced at the wet than the other. But obviously, unfortunately, throughout the day, it did close that gap a bit, but it didn't get below 1.5 seconds. So obviously, this yellow kid had to make a lot of work for the future because he's struggling quite a bit in these conditions. Look again here. He's just not trusting at all the car on the entry. Look how early he's taking off the gas. Listen, in the wet, guys, you need to be very, very good on the entries. I would say I have to align it a little bit, to be fair. It's more like that. Because as I said, it's not an exact science. You don't have, like in Formula cars, like the suspension. You don't have the suspension data. You can time exactly the bumps where it's going. So you cannot perfectly align them. Here it's a little bit by eye, I would say. Just by using a little bit of common sense, I think it's like that, you know. If you look at the time, graph, you can see at the bottom. You see there's the difference in meters they're doing. In the last sector, there's a massive difference. It's about from here, from the first hairpin to the last hairpin, there's about 31 meters of difference in the hairpins. So I would say we don't have any problem with alignment up until the chicane here. But then for the hairpins, we're gonna have a big problem with alignment. So I'll try my best. Okay, so in the double left, you can clearly see another pattern that's not pretty good. Look what he's doing. He's basically under-driving it so much on the entry to trying to gain this little part. Okay, this is not the worst corner. Actually, it's probably his best corner of the session. But you see, then he's kind of picking up the gas early. Then he's getting off the gas early. It's getting a decent exit. It's like is under driving so much on the entries in general. He's just not confident there. He loses 3 tenths, okay, 45, 74, 2.9 tenths, not massive, but still, like, at least he gets a nice drive out of the exit. It makes a bit less distance, but it's not worth it in the end. Look, then he even comes off the gas a little bit here when he's like going over the curb here. He's coming off a bit the gas, which is clearly meaning lack of confidence, because obviously this corner gets slippery, and you need to have confidence to get full throttle over the curb here, smashing the curb. If you don't have it, that's what's gonna happen. You're gonna lift the gas and you're gonna lose so much. And then again, automatically he starts to, after he lifts the gas here, it brakes pretty early. I mean, the corner is quite decent because he gets actually a really good mid speed here, but I'm not a big fan. I mean, okay, this corner is actually is only 1.5 tenths off, but look, what I don't like to see is to see this kind of trend, like you brake early, and then what you do, because you brake early, you realize that, and then bam, you lift the brakes completely, and when you have to be slow, like here, at the apex, okay, it's the point where you have to slow it down. Actually, let's try to zoom it with the GPS. I mean, hopefully you can understand what I'm trying to say. So obviously it's not perfectly aligned. It's not perfectly aligned because it's not supposed to be like that. It's supposed to be a little bit more. But you see what the yellow is doing? It's completely shit. Sorry for my swearing, but it's like, I'm very upset when I see this. Look, the red is doing a decent job, but look at the yellow. Like when you hit the curb here at the chicane, you have to do like OKJ style. You have to place the tire inside the curb. Okay, it has to be inside, touching the grass. The inside of the left rear and the left front has to be inside, because you have to stop properly and hook it. Look, in this case, how can you stop it if you're so much faster at the apex? It's basically braking early, releasing the gas, releasing the brakes, he's overshooting it, and then he gets a disaster exit. To be honest, it's not the worst corner he has, but I much prefer what, look, the red is doing. He's stopping it nicely, and then look, he's setting up the corner here compared to the yellow. The yellow is basically going too fast at the apex because he didn't hold the brakes, he was overshooting it, and then in this point, he's just completely facing in the wrong direction. Whereas look at the yellow, whereas the red, let's say, which is another color, the red is stopping it nicely also here, is facing this direction. And who do you think is gonna get a better exit out of here? Okay, who? The red driver or the yellow driver? Well, I think where we all agree it's the red driver. In fact, you can see here, look at the speed difference the red gets out, because obviously the red is already straight, whereas the yellow still turning and is going quite a bit deeper. Then we go into the first hairpin. The yellow tries to, obviously, you know what the yellow has? Like, the yellow has a big lack of confidence in himself. Big lack of confidence. Look how under the limit it is in terms of combined acceleration in the entry. So it means he's not putting any effort on the kart, any effort on the driving, and is just going in very under the limit, I would say, on the entry. Look at the peak combined acceleration, it's 1.38 against 1.03. This massive difference, which is about 38%, 35%. It's huge. So at this point, by combining the amount of steering the red is using, by the speed he's carrying, by the fact he's loading with the brakes, all of this is making the red stop the car nicely. You see, because the red is braking later at more speed, yet look at like this is interesting to me. Look, there is 72 kilometers an hour for the red and 65 for the yellow. So let's make a calculation. If we make 72.3 minus 65, guess what? It's 7.3 kilometers difference. So at this point, all right, at this very point here, there is 7.3 kilometers difference before they hit the brakes. So they hit the brakes and they have 7 kilometers. But how come then before the apex, okay, before like they get on the gas, how come there is now only, if you make the calculation, 43 again minus 41.8, it's 1.8 kilometer difference. So we went from 7 kilometers difference, look, remember, it was 7, from 7 kilometers difference to 1.8 difference. It means the red actually slowed the car down. The red, I will make you an example what the red did. The red, at this kind of deceleration, the deceleration of the red was like, pound, was sharp. The yellow was very soft, was very bad, was like this. And so obviously the yellow has to brake earlier because of that. But then in the end, you see they get close to each other, so they match each other, because this is actually the correct speed to take at the let's say at the apex. We don't really have the apex in the wet, but you get my point. So in this case, you can clearly see that, you know, this guy doesn't apply just to mini, it applies to absolutely every categories, juniors, seniors, KZs, whatever other category. But yeah, this is very important. Like if you are a bad braker and you start to come off the brakes, you know, you will get bad balance also in the middle of the corner. The car is not going to rotate. In the wet, you want the car to rotate at the apex as much as you can ideally. But in this case, you don't get it. Why? Because as I said, it's relying on the fact that you're not putting the pitch, you're not braking hard, you're not braking late, you're too soft in the entry of the corner. Yeah, guys, you know, I know that in the wet you don't feel like it because it's wet and it's like I don't feel the grip. But in the wet, it's even more important than in the dry to actually brake late, to brake hard, to carry the speed of the entry, because you generate even more temperature, you generate more grip, you generate more rotation, you get more front, and all in all, it's a win-win. So it's important. Obviously, there's a limit between braking late, like stopping the car late on the entry, and the opposite, which is to obviously the exaggeration would be to over push it. I mean, you need to guys find a limit. But look at how awesome is the combined G. Like this is also another good indicator. Like when the combined G is so nice and round, like the red, look, stopping, look, this is exactly the point it reverses. So this is the rotation point. This is what I want. When you rotate, you're in maximum lock. We put loading your body, maximum lock, and look, it translates into basically this area, which is the minimum speed. This corner was absolutely amazing. So you can see that it then opens up and the G-force comes back down. This is amazing. Compared to the yellow, look how rubbish the yellow is so under the limit on the entry. And then because, you know, he's coming off the steering, and then because he hasn't done the corner in this area, look, he's basically steering over the rubber. And because it didn't properly get the right line here, it was on the wrong place here, in the wrong angle. He's gonna have like a snap of oversteer, so in this area he's gonna lose so much. And you can see it's snap of oversteer, and this is where you get like that, the wheel speed. And look how much he loses on the exit. So the hairpins were a big disaster for him, and yeah, unfortunately he was not able to fix them a lot during the day, which obviously it's a shame for me as well. You see that the exit is bad, so he lost all the way through. So all right, let's go back to analyzing the rest. So we are almost done. All right, you want to see how much we lost here? Oh my goodness, you have no idea. Obviously it makes a lot more. It says 1 second here, so 628, 723. I believe it's something like off, like 6/10 or so, because all the red ends up doing a lot more meters. I can see from the time distance, from the time base, you can see the red in this very corner makes 4.9 against 80. The red actually does 14 meters more, 50 meters more from here to here, let's say, from this point. So just in one corner, but he actually makes a use of it. He actually carries so much more speed throughout the corner that he actually makes use of it compared to the yellow. Then the yellow also makes a lot less meter in the second hairpin and third hairpin, but overall he's 2 seconds off. And if you look at the sector times, in the last sector, look, I don't know if you can see it properly, but it's 21.4. If you're good at math, you probably don't need this, but I will still do it. 22.7 minus 21.4. 1.25 seconds in just 21 seconds. So in 3 corners, 1.2 seconds off. So yes, he makes more distance. Yeah, yes, but he carries also a lot more speed, so it pays off. All right, so let's now look at the last couple of corners. Look like how much more combined acceleration there is for the red in the second hairpin and the third hairpin. Okay, the third hairpin is a bit weird. We get combined acceleration towards the end, but it's nice again because the peak, you want to get the peak of the combined G at the very end of the rotation phase of the entry, which is then going to release and get you a nice little exit. So in this case, look, That's exactly what's happening for the red. He has a very high, it's about 1.7. Actually, I have to rescale it here because it's going beyond the, where is that? 1.7 here. It's going slightly beyond the scale, but yeah, it's 1.7. So you can see that the maximum G-force, it's a lot higher for the red. It's 1.7 against 0.9, so quite a bit bigger. And this obviously show you that the kid in the red is putting more force on the car, is stopping it more with the brakes, is rotating it more, is making the car rotate more. So the combined acceleration, you know, it's impossible that the one kart has 1.7 combined G and as the other is 0.9. Literally have to fit twice as wide tires. You'd have to have twice as much grip, and it's not possible. Like even if we wanted to, the kids had almost exactly the same setup, except a little bit of difference was broken because the red kid could handle more bottom, could handle more, like, let's say, bottom, so he could deal more with the wheel spin. Because look, this is very important. Like the problem of the yellow not only relies on the braking that basically is destroying his corner, but also relies on the exit. But everything starts on the entry. Think about it, guys. If you brake early, what do? Typically, you turn in early. All right, that's what everybody does. Unfortunately, it's if you do the first mistake, automatically translate into the second mistake, and if you turn early, automatically most of the time you get a bad exit. So in this case, look at all of the places where the yellow was tight at the mid corner, which translated him pointing in the wrong direction at the exit. Look here. Look here. It's basically, look, by the way, on the black bit, all right, on the dark bit, you can see, all right, that there is the rubber. You can see actually this is the very nice GPS image. So you can see the yellow is pointing in this direction. Look at where the red is pointing instead. Here, for example, the red is pointing in this direction. I don't know if you can see the difference. It's like one is like this on the exit. All right, let me make it more clear. One is like this and one is like that. And who do you think is gonna be more straight on the exit, the red or the yellow? Look, again, look the same. The yellow is going there. The red is already straight. I told the kids exactly the same thing. I teach them exactly the same thing. I coach them exactly the same thing. But one applied what I said and one didn't. So clearly, that's what I mean when creating your destiny. If you want to create your destiny, you have to listen to the people that actually have had experience, have done it in the past. And I believe clearly their yellow did not listen here. So you can see the massive difference in terms of speed. And look here, you see everywhere. Who do you think is going to have more wheel spin here when they rejoin the rubber? Because look here, we all agree that here there is no rubber, right? There's no rubber here. It's like this is a perfect spot to basically go in the wet because there's no rubber, okay? So it's more grippy, let's say. But what happens when you rejoin the rubber bit, which is like here, you rejoin the rubber bit here, you rejoin the rubber bit here, you rejoin the rubber bit here, okay? What do you think happens there? Well, you get wheel spin, but you can get more wheel spin or less wheel spin. How? You can get more wheel spin if you're still turning there. So if you're pointing in the wrong direction, you're like pointing still outward and you're still turning, you get wheel spin. If you're coming straight, which is the whole point, by the way, of the driving that the red is doing. The red is going so deep on the entry. Like the red, if he wanted, he could go tighter. Of course, he would. But he felt it was not the case to do it, because like if you went tighter at this point, yes, you made less meters, but then at this point you would be facing the wrong direction, you wouldn't have the traction, and then you would lose on the straight. Same here, you would be struggling with traction, and that's why he's going wide. He's carrying the speed. Here it's almost close to the barriers. Like look, there's so little distance between the barriers. Okay, it's almost driving in a street circuit a little bit. So there's a little distance there between the barriers and where he is. Also here, whereas the yellow has so much more distance. And you can see that at this point, when he rejoins the rubber, he's straight. And even though he's having a lot more speed, because when he rejoins the rubber, he's a lot faster there, he also has more steering, like it's got less steering angle, therefore he has less wheel spin. And look at how much faster his exits are. It's unbelievable. Look, so it doesn't only gain on the entries. Okay, it's not properly aligned, I have to realign it. But if I align it, I will lose my drawing. Look at how much difference the speed he has on the exits. It's huge. So it doesn't only gain on the entries with this technique, he also gains on the exit, which is to me sensational. Look, if I exactly align it, all right, look, okay, the first hairpin is aligned like that. I have to align every single one. Look, he gains on the entry and he gains on the exit. He also gains at the mid corner, but the exit is quite a big wedge. The second hairpin, he gains on the entry and he gains on the exit. The third hairpin, he gains on the entry and he gains on the exit. So you can clearly see that his driving style is helping him big time. And I was very pleased to see the red doing that and following my advice, whereas the yellow unfortunately didn't. And despite me trying my best to explain this exact technique every single session, he didn't really apply it, which tells me there was a lack of confidence and belief in himself, because obviously when you don't brake deep and you don't brake hard and you don't brake late, obviously it's a sign that you have to work on your confidence. And it's not just about the technique. You have to be confident in pushing the limits. If you don't push the limits, you're not confident, and that's not good. All right, guys, I hope that you get some value out of this. I know it's just 60 minute data, but you can still apply this in juniors, in seniors. In case that's a bit different, because you want to make like the line very V-shaped and tight, tight entry, tight exit, and at the apex you need to go over the curb. I will make a video also for that in the future, possibly. I've been flying here in the wet in KZ, in Lonato, also in other tracks. So I believe that driving in the wet is a bit more of an art than a science, but you can try to use as much as possible the techniques we explain to make it more of a science than an art. You know what I mean? You can make it more simple than it actually is. You can remove the guesswork out of the equation, I'd sort of say. So it's all about literally like finding the limit between entry, mid, exit, and trying to at the same time avoiding the rubber when possible, so that you can get more grip throughout the corner and throughout the lap. Okay, guys, I hope this was helpful. Again, please let me know in the comments below if you have got any questions, and if you have any video ideas I could do, that would be great as well. And I hope you take some value out of this. I'll see you in the next video.